Hi, welcome to session 4. Steve Arterburn here with Dr. Dave Stoop in the Take Your Life Back study. I want to talk to you a little bit today about that responsive life that we all want to be in, where we're not reacting all the time, we're not triggered, we're not controlled, but we're in control and we're acting and trusting and we're feeling our feelings. We're aware. You know, we have to change our thinking sometimes if we're to ever get out of the trap that we're in. The Bible says, you know, that we can literally transform our lives by changing the way that we think. And so rather than thinking, boy, that person really needs help and needs to change. Well, you can't change that person, but you can change yourself. Rather than thinking, boy, I just need more control of that person. Well, you can't control them. You can't cure them. You can control yourself, though. You can develop one of those fruits of the Spirit, self-control. Or, rather than thinking life is going to be better when they get better, you can say, you know what, I'm not trapped. I do have some options, and I can make my own life better no matter what this other person does. And then, sometimes people have this thinking of, I've tried everything. Well, you need to change that thinking too. Yes, you've tried everything that you knew to try, but I think there are some things you've never tried before that just could change everything. And so you need to reach out and get additional help from people that maybe know a few things that you don't know. In the end, what I hope will happen is that you have compassion for yourself, but also compassion for that other person that you've been thinking all this time needs to so desperately change. Compassion is a great kind of love that often gets ignored. Dave?
Well, there's a process that you've got to go through. As you begin to develop a responsive life, you're going to take more responsibility for your own losses, and you're going to grieve what has been lost in your life. We all have losses. Nobody was raised in a perfect environment. If they were, that created problems, a different set of problems. God designed parenting to be just good enough so that we struggle with our own development. But there's a grieving process that we outlined for you in the book that's important, because we name the loss, and then we begin to find some safe people that we can talk through with. You cannot become a responsive person in isolation. You will continue to be a reactive person unless you can bring some safe people into your life that you can bounce these ideas off of, that you can share the process with, and get some insight into where you have your blind spots. You've got to deal with the truth, and it's your truth that matters. You don't have to make everybody else agree with your truth. It's what you experience that matters, and that's why you need the safe people who will listen to you and affirm you, even though you probably are skewed in your understanding of it, and if you shared with the person that caused the problem in your mind, they would have a whole different take on it, but that doesn't change the fact that this is your truth, because that kind of truth is very subjective. Then you've got to identify your emotional response. I call it a basic emotional posture, where you're either going to have a basic response of anger, which is what I had, or a basic response of fear, or a basic response of sadness and melancholy, or a basic emotional response of shame. Those are the 4 negative primary emotions that we all go to. And what you do at this point is you say, typically what I respond to a situation where I feel controlled or I feel out of control is I respond with anger. That's what I did. I responded with anger. So once I understand my basic emotional posture, I can now begin to develop strategies to control my emotional response. So I don't react anymore. I have choices in how I respond. And then you have to grieve what you've lost. And grieving has 2 facets to it. It has anger, which is a protesting kind of anger, and sadness, which is the sadness over the loss. I often illustrate that I collect old fountain pens, and I lost one of them. And I was angry, and I was sad, because it was an old pen that wrote so beautifully, and I left it in a restaurant, and nobody would be honest enough to tell me they picked it up. And for a couple of days, I grieved. It was a very simple loss, a very small loss. And for, I think, 2 days, I was frustrated, angry at myself, angry at life, angry at the people who wouldn't tell the truth. I was sad. I missed my pen. And then I accepted it. That was reality. And once you've grieved properly, then you move to acceptance. And grief usually is easier. It's easier for men to do the angry part and very hard to do the sad part. And women tend to do the sad part very easily, but they avoid the angry part. And you got to do both. But think of the anger as protest and the sadness as resignation. Steve?
Well, Dave, what we're trying to say is that your life doesn't have to be a life of reacting at everything, or being triggered by everything that comes along, or being controlled by something. You actually can become free to respond. And when you do that, there's a word that starts to sink in. You kind of start to believe it's possible, and it's that word better. You start thinking, I just don't have to go from bad to worse all the time. My life can be better. I can take it back. I can make it better. And then you might even find yourself living a life that you would describe as the best life possible. That's what happens when you take your life back. I hope you're getting there. We've got one more session to go. See you then.